Welcome back to the Hero Front Podcast, and today I am so honored to sit down with a leader, a storyteller, and an advocate for veterans, Colonel Michael Komorous. With 24 years of service in the United States Air Force, Mike's career has spanned high-stake leadership roles, from flying drones in combat situations to leading life-changing humanitarian missions. But now, in his next chapter, he's turning his focus to something deeply meaningful, giving veterans a voice. His new platform, Voice for Valor, launches March 1st and is dedicated to sharing untold military stories. Stories of sacrifice, resilience, and leadership that deserve to be heard. You can find Voice for Valor on YouTube, where Mike is building a space to inspire, educate, and bridge the gap between military service in civilian life.
We're watching somebody for a couple weeks, developing a pattern of life, understanding of them to ensure that if you are to strike that target, they aren't near loved ones, right? So you're really focusing on limiting your collateral damage, if you will.
In today's episode, we'll talk about defining moments that shape Mike's leadership, the challenges veterans face in transition, and the soft skills that make all the difference post-service. We'll also dive into his insights on recruiting and retention in today's military, why people are getting out, what leaders can do to keep them in, and how storytelling plays a major role in shaping the future force. But this conversation isn't just about leadership. It's about connection and healing. Mike opens up about the heartbreaking loss of his best friend to suicide and the lasting impact it's had on him.
So I check my phone, and my buddy Tony calls me with panic in his voice and says, "I need you to give me a call." I give him a call, and he says, "Sean took his life." And I was like, you say that again? Sean took his life. Sean was my best friend. He introduced me to my wife. He was in our wedding. We lived together for years.
In one of the most raw and emotional parts of our interview, he shares what it was like to process that grief, the importance of having difficult conversations, and how he hopes that Voice for Valor can create that space for healthy reflection and transparency in the veteran community.
We used to say, "Dude, you need to have a podcast. You need to have a TV show. You are so funny." That when he took his life, this Voice for Valor thing, it kind of pushed me over the edge and said, okay, I've got to do this, because I cannot lose another friend to something like that.
We talk about the weight so many can carry, the moments we don't always talk about, and why acknowledging those emotions is crucial for moving forward.
It's a very violent mission. I had to take a lot of lives, and I had to see a lot of my fellow pilots take lives, and then not having an outlet to talk about that. So here you are flying drones, and you go home to your wife and kids, and you can't talk about it, yet you just ended someone else's life who probably had a wife and kids.
We talk about photography, videography, our pets, and the unexpected ways our paths just keep crossing. This is a conversation about service, identity, and making an impact beyond the uniform. Now, if you believe in the power of veteran stories, you do not want to miss this one. So let's get into it. This is the hero's journey of Colonel Mike Komorous. What's up, Josh here, and I got a quick update for you before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time, because there's two things that I just have to say to you. And the first is just a tremendous thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to us, and it really is a dream come true to not only be sharing the incredible stories of these guests, but to then inspire so many of you listeners. It has become my life's purpose, and I cannot thank you enough for supporting me and so many others on this journey of positivity. But secondly, it's a dream where I feel like we are just getting started, and the sky is the limit. I am so excited to see where this goes, and I'm so blessed to have you on this journey. And if you appreciate this message, if you appreciate what we do here at the Hero Front Podcast, please follow us on this app. Hit subscribe. Now, if you do that, here's the promise that I'm going to make to you. I am going to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I possibly can now and going forward. We're going to deliver the guests that you want me to speak to. We're going to have the topics that you want to hear about. And of course, we're going to keep doing all the things that you've always loved about the podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now let's get back to the show and let's get after it.
Yeah, I mean, you have just been so unbelievably busy. And so the transition
Yeah.
I know has been tough. So talk me through that.
Man, there's just so many things to think about. And it's so hard to plan when you don't know your next job's income. You don't know the VA's percentage they're going to give you. These are like massive windows of pay difference. Like the VA, $100 a month or 4,000. That's what you're looking at. And then with my career, I had jobs that were like 50,000 a year up to 100,000 a year. Which one am I going to get? I don't know. And at first I was really picky, and then I learned real quick, I need to just pick something. And man, it's so stressful. I will say the podcast, all my videos for the past 4 years, that got me hired. You know, all the networking, the connections, people know my character, my story, that all got me hired. It wasn't my resume. You know, if I send my resume to 1,000 different places, it's going to get looked at by a bunch of AI and probably thrown in a delete box. So, oh man, it's been busy, but just started the job. I'm on the resiliency team on Eglin. So I call it all the fun stuff about being in the Air Force, mentoring airmen, bringing on guest speakers, you know, hosting 5Ks and big events, giving them training, bringing the teams together. Like that's my full-time job. And I'm super lucky that I landed this spot here at Team Eglin. I don't have to move. Well, I moved to get off base.
For the longest time, it's easy to forget, especially when you're in the Pentagon, because when you're in the Pentagon, dude, I'm a master sergeant, I'm a second lieutenant, I'm a dime a dozen. We're everywhere. So I don't think anything of it until I go off base. So if I go to, for instance, I went to Altus, Oklahoma for C-17 requal training. Man, they rolled out the red carpet, stock refrigerator, car, people to pick you up, people to set up events for you. And I was like, it's definitely not like this at the Pentagon.
Yeah, the Pentagon will humble you, man. They will humble you. You know, me, I felt like a child in there when you saw me walking around.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, for instance, I was in the bathroom using the latrine next to a 3-star general. And I'm like, hey, sir, you don't even have your own bathroom. He's like, welcome to the Pentagon. Even 3 stars have to use the public restroom. So yeah, it's totally different than coming from a base where O6 and above is treated just on a completely different level. But I never identified that way. I mean, I've always just considered myself, you know, the open door policy. Whoever wants to come in, I'll have airmen come in my office just to chat. I mean, there's days where I don't even get to my email till the end of the day because I'm just focused on the airmen and having those conversations. Because, you know, life moves a lot faster than those impersonal emails that we're constantly sending out. And so I much prefer face to face. And that's the unfortunate thing about what we're doing right now is that, yeah, we're having a chance to see each other on a screen, but I get so much more from the face to face interaction. So sure, we're doing an informal little interview podcast here now. But if I were in your office or you were in mine, the engagement's just so much better.
And yeah, and if you notice, I have a lot of in-person interviews.
Yeah.
And they do far better than all the other ones. I mean, it's not even a comparison. When people see it, they're like, oh, you were actually, like, you were in person. Like, it's just a little bit more interesting because it took a little bit more logistics to set it up. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so people tend to invest more of their time into those. I just talked with, or I just released an episode with Mr. Dale Marks, who, he's like the director of operations at Team Eglin. He's he was a pilot. He's got blown up by an IED and survived, broke his neck. Guy's been through all sorts of stuff, and he just got hired by Trump on his personal team. And so I didn't know that. So like the episode was just blowing up. I'm like, my God, like I know he's a nice guy, but what is happening right now? Well, that episode dropped right after his announcement, and as people were searching him, my interview was popping up, and that's why it had so many downloads. I was like, dang, the timing could not have been better for that.
Yeah, you know, the timing, that TikTok video or whatever you sent where the the White House briefing, she talked about podcasters, and you had your funny little face coming in. I was like, oh man, this is perfect timing. It definitely clickbait. It gave me a chuckle. But one thing that I've realized about while I've been doing this, I've been talking to so many other businesses, and I just had a conversation with the private equity team and just discussing kind of the game plan, reaching out to airmen, trying to inspire that next generation to serve. Also, I said, I really like to help guys with their LinkedIn pages and help them with their resumes and make them look their best online. Cause I'm like, hey man, the military, we sell ourselves short. We're just that humble servant that, hey, I'm just happy to have a job. Thank you so much, salute and carry on. And so I'm trying to create value for us to let people know the skill sets that we've developed. And the private equity guy was like, yeah, they don't really care about that. And I said, that's just so unfortunate. He said, maybe as a recruiter and you're trying to get guys jobs for a particular company, I could see how private equity and investors would be interested in that. But he said, otherwise, that doesn't make money. And I said, this isn't about money. This is
Right.
about trying to inspire others to serve. 20 years of service and some of your story that you've shared about alcohol and not seeing your sister for all those years. I hope there's a kid out there that hears that and says, oh, wow, maybe alcohol isn't the answer to my problems. And I need to seek guidance from others and be more of a community involved with community. And it's unfortunate because in the world of business, that just doesn't equate to dollars. They're like, well, how can you measure that? How can you measure the success of you trying to help airmen through podcasts or videos? He's like, I'm in LA. He's like, everybody wants to be a podcaster. And I kept thinking, but it's not the podcast. It's the interaction and allowing others a platform to reach out to you asking for help. I had a young captain. I said, hey man, anybody wants to come over and get a headshot? Come on over. I'll help you with your LinkedIn page, blah, blah, blah. Nobody reached out. And then like 3 months later, hey sir, I'm getting ready to retire. Do you remember me from that class? You were talking about headshots. Like, yeah, dude, come on over. Came over, gave him a headshot. We had a long conversation about future career ambitions. And he's like, man, I just thought you were full of crap. I didn't think you were actually going to do this. I'm like, no, dude, I want you to be successful in your next chapter of life. And I'm not asking for anything. It's support for what I'm doing, but I mean, I'm
Right.
not asking. There's no,
Yeah.
I
That's
just want you to
beautiful,
pay.
man.
I just want you to pay it forward. So,
So yeah, and I really respect you. I love that you do that. Not everything's not everything can be quantified. For one, I mean, how are you going to quantify someone's happiness or success in life? If you don't have a time machine, you don't truly know the impact. There's a level of faith that you need in the process, right?
yeah.
Really, the only way to measure it, like for the resiliency team, the team that I'm on, is if we were just gone for a year and you would measure, all the climate reports and the suicides and see if there was a dip in any of that. I mean, really, that would be the only way I could think of measuring it. But we've seen these things in place where things do get drastically better. And I pray to God I never get to the point where I see everything through the lens of an Excel spreadsheet or a dollar sign. I pray that never happens to me, because that is a stark way to look at at life in general.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody that asks me questions about what I'm doing now, I say personally, I'm invested about $40,000 into this. Now, granted, I have the financial means to do that, and that's been years of accumulation, computers, cameras, lighting equipment. It's not like all of a sudden just I decided to cut a check. So it's been a while. But my point being, I would do this anyway, right?
Hmm.
It's just I just enjoy it. I enjoy meeting others and hearing their stories and figuring out ways that we all come together. And that was the thing about the military is that it taught us to break yourself down as an individual and build yourself back up as a teammate. And I've lived that way ever since I joined the service. And I'm so thankful for that opportunity. So my wife always says, here he is on his bandwagon, trying to recruit somebody. I'm like, hey, if there's anybody lost in their late teens, early 20s that's looking for a path, my goodness, I cannot think of anything better than joining the service.
Yeah, it definitely helped me. I mean, it's challenging, but I was trying to escape things, man. I think a lot of people join to escape that prior life. And then for me, as you know, I ran into drinking and I missed funerals, and my stepmom overdosed and I wasn't there for my sisters, and it was just the shame just compiled upon me. So I did have this very, very big rough patch. But at the end of the day, it was my wingmen, it was my fellow airmen, it was my friends, my mentors that pulled me out of that darkness. And now I try to provide all the information that I was searching for all those years ago. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to reach Airman White that was on that flight line at Kadena, miserable, just hating my existence. And I remember on every break, because I didn't have a cell phone with the internet or anything, but on every break, I would go in the break room, log in the computer, and just try to figure out what the hell was wrong with me. And I was too afraid to raise my hand and say I had a problem because I didn't want to get kicked out, because the shame would just be unbearable at that point. So I was trying to do it on my own, and I was trying to find this information, and I really couldn't find anything. So every episode I do is to reach that version of me who was on nights, on 12s for a year straight, hadn't seen the sun for a damn year, couldn't tell you who my supervisor was or anything. I'm trying to reach that person, truly.
Yeah, personally, I'm not a fan of first-term airmen having overseas assignments. I think that just the pure homesickness alone, no matter where you are, but particularly hard overseas, I hear constant stories of young airmen in Germany. Oh, this sucks. In England. Oh, this sucks. In Japan. Oh, this sucks. It's not that it sucks, is that you are completely disconnected from all your support networks that you had before. So I honestly, I mean, not like you and I can solve those problems here chatting about it, but yeah, I'm not a fan of first-term airmen being overseas.
Yeah, it's like you've already left your whole life behind, which is a big, tremendous thing to do. But now you're in a different time zone. You might be driving on the other side of the road. Like it is a lot. My first base was Guam, and then my second base was Okinawa. So I had two overseas back to back, and then I went to Whiteman, and I'm from DC, so even Whiteman was like culture shock because I've never been in like the country or the Midwest.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot we sacrifice, but ultimately, it saved my life. It changed my life. And now, like you, I want to do everything I can to provide that back to people, that inspiration or that education or whatever they're seeking, to kind of light that spark. And I know you're the same way, which is why I love you, man. You're fantastic. I've never met a colonel that's quite like you. I mean, you're a damn colonel. You're a pilot. But look at all the other stuff you do. Most people are like, I'm a pilot. That's it. I've made it. I'm done. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a really hard thing to do. But you've somehow taken it like leaps and bounds beyond that. You know what I mean? You're kind of like a colonel and a chief combined in my mind.
Man, I really appreciate that. And I think I identify more as a chief than I do a colonel, because kind of what you said. And, when you mentioned how much has changed your life, that was what I was going to ask you was, okay, look at Airman White 20 years ago and tell Airman White all the things that you're going to do in the next 20 years. And I imagine it would blow your mind.
It would have made my head explode.
So I think about, I'm from the Tacoma, Washington area, and I don't even really like going there anymore because I'm so different. It's not that I'm better than anybody else. I'm just so different. I've just experienced all these life-changing moments that a lot of people don't understand, except for the military component or, the folks in the State Department or the Secret Service that have had these opportunities to have all these experiences. When you sit down and start talking story, if you will, they just kind of give you the 1,000-yard stare because they can't relate to it. What about you? What are your thoughts from that standpoint when you go home and see old friends?
Well, all my most successful friends are not in my hometown, I will say. I have some amazingly skilled people I, grew up with, and they're all doing big things all around the world, to be honest. But, I honestly knew I shouldn't come back as far back as like 2009. So after actually before that, like 2007, I knew, because after Guam, I went home for a month and I went ballistic. I was drinking, I was partying, because like I missed all that with my friends after high school. So I got to kind of relive that for 30 days. So I hit the ground running. And man, I did not want to go. I did not want to leave. I was like, I could just stay here and do what they're doing. And, it seemed very tempting. But then I knew I shouldn't do it. When I talked to someone, I told this group of friends my next base was Japan, which is like super exciting, right? Like who gets to go live in Japan at our age? And I remember they said, "Man, that sucks, man. I'm sorry." Like they thought that was a bad thing. And once they
That was a
said that,
punishment.
I was like, I'm done with this place. Like this, clearly, I don't ever want to have an opportunity like this and think it sucks. Like
Yeah.
the disconnect was already there. I think I came back one more time. I told you I lost my stepmom, and so my sisters went through a really bad rough patch, and it was actually quite painful to go home and to see like all these people, my best friends, my sisters. It was a lot of people struggling, and I did not have the emotional toolkit to deal with that. I didn't know what to tell them. I was struggling myself. How the hell am I going to help anyone else? So it became quite painful for me to go home. And at that last trip home, I said, I'm going to have to move on from this and create my own life. There's no going back. It's too different now. That was a really hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. And like I was saying, I imagine you don't feel like you're better than anybody else. It's just there's certain things that will suck you into a lifestyle that you used to have that you just don't have any longer. So when I try to see friends or family, I prefer that they come out to DC. Let me show you the National Mall. Let's go see all the historical things and have a good time here. And yeah, I don't know why. Maybe it's just that fear of getting, I would be that young Mike that everybody knew 30 years ago. It's like I'm so different.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about all the dumb things I did.
And let's be honest, you kind of don't want to run into those folks with your family. Like, let's be real.
Yeah, there's people. I went home for something, and somebody was like, "Do you remember that time you were drinking and you stole that thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I remember that. Thank you for the reminder. I don't think that that's something that's really relevant to what we're talking about right now, but yeah, thanks. Appreciate
Yeah.
that."
Like, yeah. I've run into the same situations where I'm like, no way in hell I'm bringing my family here.
Yeah,
But my dad has since moved. He lives in near Alexandria, Virginia now. So I grew up in Waldorf, Maryland when he was stationed at Andrews. That's where he finished out his career as an active guardsman. And then he's since moved to Virginia. So anytime I do visit, I'm like near DC. I'm in a whole different, fun area anyways. So it's never been an issue, to be honest, at this point.
Our worlds are smaller than you might realize. What was your dad doing AGR wise at Andrews?
Um, at one point he was the commander of FSS, but his primary career field has always been comm.
And what years was he there at Andrews?
Oh gosh, he probably retired in like 2000, I think.
2000. Okay. Okay. I missed him.
And
I
then,
was
well,
thinking,
you might not have completely missed him because then up to 2010, he worked at the Board of Corrections on Andrews as a civilian.
oh yeah. Yeah. BCMR.
Yes.
I had tons of friends that work in the BCMR world. I didn't show up here till 2015, so I did miss him, but it's such a small world. One of the pilots I flew with out of Charlotte, his dad was a maintenance group commander and was is AGR, but Andrews, he's actually going to be the not the officiant. What's the person that reads the orders and all that stuff when you retire? I don't know why I can't remember the names of these folks, but he's coming up to Charlotte to be my what's the term I'm looking for?
I don't know.
You know what I mean? The person that says, all rise and then reads off your retirement order.
Like officiating. Is
I
that
don't
the
know. I forget. I forget what it's called.
Man, my brain is at 50% today too, so don't feel bad. I woke up today like, ugh. Oh, but by the way, this is my first. You know how civilians can come in an hour early every day and then they accumulate enough time to get like every other Friday off? And I
Yeah.
always hated them for this. Out of sheer jealousy, right? I'm like busting my ass. I look at my phone, they're at the beach. I'm like, really? Guess what? That's me today.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. So every other week, based on that additional hour, you get every other Friday.
I get a Friday off every other Friday.
Nice. So
Yeah.
this resiliency job that you're new to, it sounds very similar to kind of the PA world. You're getting to do a lot of the morale events, and do you guys do life coaching, or what are you doing in this resiliency office?
So the PA here at Eglin is very different. They're all civilian for one, that's unique, and for two, they only do like the biggest of stories, right? So like you have to be a colonel or above for like a headshot or a chief or above. Well, there's nothing above that, but you get what I'm saying. Um, it's got to be like a tremendous event that impacts the community or the entire base. Like they don't go to ALS, they don't do any of that. Um, that's actually why I didn't want to stick around there because I had no involvement with all the places I love around base, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
yeah.
And so when I met this resiliency team, they get all sorts of certifications with like teaching life skills, and they have all sorts of these group activities, and every one of them was like me. They saw the world like me, all the things that we appreciate about people and connecting each other, like they just understood the way I thought and the way I saw the world. So like I feel like I felt in like my tribe here.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, we just go unit to unit. We split up units, and there's many units here at Eglin. I have like 15 squadrons that is going to be handed to me, and then I just rotate through those 15 squadrons, making sure that they're getting professional development, that they're getting like guest speakers, or really anything. Our budget is pretty insane. We can do a lot of fun stuff for them. And so it's really up to us to keep them motivated, to keep them connected. Like that is our sole purpose. So very, very unique job to have.
Is this an unfunded contract that you guys have to beg for money, or is this something the Air Force is investing in enterprise wide?
They're trying to put it at every single base.
Okay, so are you guys a beta test on this program, or where? Because I'd never heard of it.
I know we're the leading office.
Okay, okay,
Like we're one of the biggest, and we've benchmarked the entire program. Not me personally, but I just caught the tail end of like their big inspection, and basically all the other ones around the Air Force are being built around our lessons learned. So I'm in a great spot for the job.
okay.
The lady running it, her name's Kelly. She's been doing stuff like this for 20 years.
Mm,
It used to be called different things. It's evolved a bit, but resiliency and bringing people together and all that she's been doing for 20 years. She's a huge asset. And so, yeah, we're kind of building it as we go for the rest of the Air Force to then emulate and build themselves.
okay. Yeah, no, that's great to hear. It's all about money and manpower, and that's why I was trying to figure out if you guys had funding as a requirement, or if this is just something that is a beta that they're going to have to go ask for and a proof of concept. The Air Force is obsessed with data, so I was thinking, man, how can they
Well,
measure that success?
they started with two people, Kelly and one other lady, 4 years ago. Now they have 10. So
That's
it's
awesome.
grown exponentially. It just started with two people. So yeah, and it's funded from, I'm a GS employee.
Yeah.
We're all GS. Like it's a legit thing that has been created here.
Well, good thing that your final assignment there was Eglin, because what a great landing opportunity for this to happen for you.
Absolutely, dude. I'm so happy about it. I was putting it out in the universe for so long, and they knew the podcast. They knew what I was all about, and they want to bring all that to this team. And I'm like, say less. Let's go.
That's awesome. That's great. So you'll set up some interview opportunities through that platform as well.
I'm trying to create their own podcast. If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
I want to get a whole studio built, not just for us, but anyone on base.
Okay.
So I am going to try that.
That's awesome. No, that's great. Good.
But
Good
hey,
for
we're not
you.
here to talk about me, my man. We're here to talk about
We're
you.
just shooting the breeze, dude.
I know.
What do you want to know about me?
Well, first, I just want to address Voice for Valor. First of all, I have to admire your very professional approach. If you look at me 4 years ago, I look like it was amateur hour, right? It's come a long way, but you hit the ground at like professional level day one. How the hell did you do that?
I'm a total photography YouTube nerd, so doing a lot of research and figuring out what works and what doesn't. Because I tell people all the time, look, I know I don't have a face for TV or a voice for radio,
Are
but I
you
have a
shitting me?
but I have a passion for
You look
people.
like damn Tom Cruise, man. Are you kidding?
But I have a passion for people, and I think that I like to think that that comes across in my personality. So, like I said, man, if I can just help my growing up, it was odd like some of us others. And so I needed that. I needed a purpose-driven life. I needed an organization that continuously challenges you, knowing that you're going to fail, knowing that you're going to fall, but you can get back up and continue to progress. I'm sitting here writing my book, and I was writing a few chapters on it today, and I was a medic at a trauma center before I joined the Air Force. And the medic that trained me had been there for 10 years. And as we got to know each other, he started talking about finances, and he makes 14 bucks an hour, and his wife is a radiology tech, and with their two salaries together, they finally could afford having a child. Here I am, like 23 years old, making 12 bucks an hour, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, in another 10 years, I might be at $14 an hour." So no matter how hard I work, no matter what I do, I'm stuck with a very low glass ceiling. Like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. So I started at the hospital. I worked with a bunch of retired flight docs. One was a F-18 pilot in the Navy and then became a physician. Another one was a helicopter pilot in the Army, became a physician. And then the Air Force guy was a physician that worked for the Surgeon General before he retired. And they all worked in this ER together. And they said, "Hey, man, have you ever considered the military, the Air Force?" And I was like, "No way, dude. I can't get up at 5 a.m. and do push-ups and have people yell at me. I love working out, but I like working out on my terms." They're like, "No, no, no, the Air Force. It's almost like going to a Fortune 500 company. You can be a pilot. You can do all these things." I was like, "Pilot? Really? Tell me more." And so they talked me into the Air Force. And I needed that direction, man. I just did so many dumb things. Like I said, if I wasn't working at the hospital, I waited tables at a steakhouse, and then it was drinks afterwards, and just a life that didn't have a purpose, didn't have a path. And so those guys totally turned my life around, and I'm forever thankful for them.
So you saw the power of storytelling right there in a way, mentorship, storytelling, using someone else's perspective to help you make a smarter choice.
Yes, they were so wonderful. It all started, I was working out at the gym, and I had my EMT book with me, and I was studying to be a firefighter medic. And this guy just walks up to me and he says, "Hey, what are you studying over there?" "Oh, I want to be an EMT." And we started explaining the firefighting thing. And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm a doctor here at the emergency room. Once you get that EMT done, why don't you just come be a medic with us while you're doing the volunteer firefighter thing?" And so that's the way I am. I walk into places and just start asking people questions just to see if I can help. You know what I mean? That doctor at the gym, he didn't have to say hello. He didn't have to say, "Oh, what are you studying over there, kiddo?" And so I'm the same way, man. I will talk
Yeah.
to anybody and try to find ways that I can help, because it charges my batteries to see people be successful,
Yeah,
because they did it for me.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You had that perspective so early on of someone investing in you and helping you, and then you got to the point where you wanted to help other people, which is beautiful, and you do it so damn well too.
I appreciate that.
So we have a few topics we want to hit on. I don't know if you remember what you put, but I did write it down.
Sure.
Topic 1 was leadership and resilience. Topic 2, soft skills and career transitions. Topic 3, giving back and voice for valor. And topic 4, recruiting and retention in today's military. So I was hoping we could talk straight about leadership and resilience, kind of the core of who you are. It's a word we hear a lot in the military, but what does it mean personally to you, and have you cultivated that throughout your career? Was it always super easy for you, or is it something that you had to continuously work on as time went on?
Up until I was a young major, senior captain, young major, I was all about myself, making sure my OPR was the best. I'm number one of this, I'm number one of that, perfect PT scores. It was all about me and what can I do to progress. And then as a young major, I was flying RPAs in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we it's a very violent mission. I had to take a lot of lives, and I had to see a lot of my fellow pilots take lives, and then not having an outlet to talk about that. So
Are you
here
talking about
you are,
flying drones?
flying drones. Yeah. So here
Okay.
you are flying drones, and you go home to your wife and kids, and you can't talk about it, yet you just ended someone else's life who probably had. a wife and kids, or you're watching somebody for a couple weeks developing a pattern of life understanding of them to ensure that if you are to strike that target, they aren't near loved ones, right? So you're really focusing on limiting your collateral damage, if you will. And
So it's not just shooting a missile at someone, you're actually stalking them for a while, like getting to know their patterns, who they are.
yeah,
So it kind of makes it emotionally way harder to do when
it
you've kind of
does.
gotten to know this person and they don't even know you're up there watching.
It's really hard.
The only thing I know about that world is that movie with Ethan Hawke,
Hmm.
right? Is that who was in it? I believe.
Yeah, that horrible, absolutely horrifically terrible movie. But
I'm
yes,
sure from your perspective it was, but I do give it credit for letting us know, the viewer, that it can be very emotionally challenging. I think it did good at least letting the public know that exists,
yeah,
right? And so I've never actually talked to anyone who's done that until you. Um,
yeah.
is it as hard as it was portrayed in that movie where he started drinking, he didn't know who to talk to, he didn't want to lose his flying status, all this pressure just barreling down on him as day in and day out he's shooting Hellfire missiles? How was that for you? Does it get that hard?
It was the exact same thing for me. The internal struggle. Maybe if I wasn't, maybe if I wasn't married, maybe if I didn't have kids, maybe my mindset would have been a little bit different. But for me, it taking that home created a lot of drinking. When I was on night shift, I would stay on night shift. So even on my days off, I would stay up all night till 5, 6 a.m. all alone while my family slept, and I would sit there and play some of those video games, Black Ops or you name it, some of those shooting video games. And I remember my stress level, just my anxiety just going through the roof, being so mad because, somebody shot me in this video game. And looking back at it now, it's like, yeah, bro, because you were dealing with all this stuff at work and you had nobody to talk to. And now you're building more anxiety, playing this violent video game that if it's triggering you and you want to throw your controller through the TV, perhaps you should start talking to somebody. And that's when I started talking to the behavioral health professional there on base because he was specifically there for us understanding the violence of this mission. But we just did not connect. I mean, he was just like, well, when you wake up in the morning, just tell yourself you're going to have a good day. I'm like, wow, bro, that's some real profound advice. Where did you get your medical degree? Um, and so I was looking for a way out. And so that's when I figured out how to get back to the C-17 community and get back to headquarters and just get off that island. I love the guys, and I know what we did was right, and I truly believe it was ethical and moral, but it was still really hard. Some of my friends are F-15 pilots, and they've had lots of similar missions, and I was asking them what their thoughts were, and they said, we don't have that similar effect because we don't watch them. And then when we do drop our bombs on target, we're already pulling out of the basket and headed back home. So we don't sit around for some of the
They
activity
can't
that takes
watch it
place.
in 4K HD zoomed in.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, man, it's just hard. The human
Yeah.
mind shouldn't be staring at things like that. Similar to some of my friends that are police officers. How can you deal with all this negativity in society and then come home and be happy with your family? You just develop this cynical mindset. And yeah, so I mean, the mission is valuable, and I know why we do it, but that doesn't make it any easier.
If knowing what you know now, I feel like you've kind of come to terms with it more now.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything you would have done differently or tell your past self? Let's say you couldn't get out of it. Let's say you were stuck in it, but you had the opportunity to give your old yourself feedback going through it real time. Is there anything you could say to that version of you that would help? Any advice?
Seek counseling earlier, and I used to talk to a lot of my other fellow pilots because I was the flight commander. I was one of the higher up guys, if you will, in the squadron, and I just said, look, these are human beings. I get it. This is a TV screen. I get it. We're in a combat zone in a foreign country. But I said, these are human beings. So just realize that when lives are being taken, you got to take this seriously. And I started talking to a PTSD counselor, and I told him how frustrated I was with some of my young lieutenants and captains, not I, not glorifying it, but just the way they would be, the machismo about it. And the counselor said something that I never thought of. He said, Mike, they could be dealing with the same trauma. That's just their way of responding to it. Whereas your response was alcohol, going home, keeping things to yourself. So he says, just realize that it could have been causing internal turmoil to them as well, but they just had a different response. And I was like, I didn't think about it that way. And I see your point of view on that.
Yeah,
So
no, I think he's spot on. I've seen, I did military funeral honors for 2 years, which is a very hard thing to ask young new airmen to do. And yeah, some of them would make some pretty dark humor, jokes about the funerals we did. And at first I was mad, but after talking to them about it, I kind of came to that same conclusion. It's almost like a distraction from those dark thoughts. So
yeah.
when you saw people with all this bravado and gassing themselves up, that was just so they could emotionally get through it, most likely.
Yeah. And so when you started off the question with leadership, that's when my leadership switched from, okay, what can I do to look good? Or what can I do to be the top stratification of all these competitive things that we put ourselves through, to more of emotional intelligence and really getting to know all the people I worked with to make sure that they were okay because of that mission. That's when I really started to understand the importance of taking care of one another. So I still wouldn't trade any of those missions or any of those experiences, because it created an emotional intelligence in me that catapulted me into more leadership opportunities and more of a transparent lifestyle of, hey, I'm having a bad day, or I'm hurting. We're all hurting. So, feel free to talk about it. One of my friends' dog passed away. The first thing I asked was, how are your kids doing? I mean, did your kids have a chance to say goodbye? Was it sudden? Just thinking about all the emotional turmoil that we deal with and just taking care of one another. So that's when my leadership really, really changed.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. Not a lot of people can take something that's so challenging and make it a part of their leadership toolkit going forward, right? Sometimes the drinking just doesn't stop. So
Yeah.
when we hear like 22 a day and we're always like, what's going on? Why is that happening? Who are these people? It's people who had stuff like that just never got out of it. They didn't have that friend or mentor, and they just never got out of it. They just kept sinking lower and lower. And so, for you to take your story and now use it for good, and I'm sure it helps heal you in a way too. Super proud of you for doing that. I think it's a really great message to anyone who is wondering how to turn, their pain into purpose instead of just going further down that negative rabbit hole, if you would.
That brings me to my next story, about the purpose and pain. I was here at the Pentagon, and I go grab my cell phone on a break and realize that I've missed a message. So I check my phone, and my buddy Tony calls me with panic in his voice and says, I need you to give me a call. I give him a call, and he says, Sean took his life. And I was like, you say that again? Sean took his life. Sean was my best friend. He introduced me to my wife. He was in our wedding. We lived together for years. We worked at the hospital together before I joined the Air Force, and then he joined the police department. And he took somebody down on the line of duty, and he started calling me saying, hey, I know you have a really violent job out there flying drones, so you're the only guy I can trust to understand and talk about this. And so we would have long conversations about what he was going through, and I would try to provide generalities about what I was going through, and that, man, our jobs do things that we don't always, that we're not always mentally prepared for. The drinking got out of control. So he came to visit us a few years later when we lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. And my wife had like a bottle of vodka in the freezer. He drank the whole thing and was just completely lucid. I had no idea that he'd even been drinking. And then my wife
Oh,
said that
wow.
he started cracking bottles elsewhere in the house. And so by the time the visit was coming to an end, I was like, brother, we need to have a talk, man. Are you okay? And he was, oh yeah, everything's fine. And I reached out to Tony and said, Tony, I've never seen anybody drink so much alcohol. And he's like, oh, he's probably just letting loose because he was happy to see you. It's been a few years. And I said, brother, I'm seriously concerned. And he took his life. And Tony and I always said Sean was the most charismatic, intelligent, funny, witty guy. We used to say, dude, you need to have a podcast. You need to have a TV show. You are so funny. That when he took his life, this voice for Valor thing, it kind of pushed me over the edge and said, okay, I've got to do this because I cannot lose another friend to something like that. It just, it was a terrible experience. And I'm through the levels of grief. I'm so mad at him. So this Christmas, I put on a sweatshirt that his brother made for me when he passed, and I told my wife, I'm like, I'm gonna wear Sean's sweatshirt for Christmas while the kids open presents. And I was just mad. I'm like, dude, you're missing this. You could have been here with us. He came to visit us all the time. We were kind of his extended family, and he loved my kids, and he's gone. So
Jeez, man, I'm so sorry. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. I know that's a lot to unpack. And it was your best friend. I mean, that is, and then yeah, you start to think back to those times like when he was drinking, had a similar situation with a friend that all the way back in Guam at that first base, who was bragging about crushing fifths of Jack every day. And he had the empty bottles to prove it. I didn't believe it until I saw he opened his closet and the bottles just come barreling out and we were all laughing about it. We're like, oh, he's so crazy,
Yeah.
it was nothing to laugh about. And he ended up losing his life to alcoholism. And so sometimes your gut's telling you like something is wrong, but there's I struggle with those situations. When I think back, could I have done anything? Could I have said anything? I feel like that's a natural thing for us who are still going on to think about.
Yeah.
Like you said, the levels of grief. At some point you were angry. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if there's anything that can be done. Sometimes I just don't. My stepmom that passed away. She accomplished all of her goals in life. She became a nurse. She worked on Andrews. Did everything she set out to do, and then got into alcohol and drugs and stealing meds from the hospital. And she laid out all these photos of her life on the bed, and no one heard from her in 3 days. And by the time they finally checked, she was deceased. They don't know if she did that on purpose or not. And I deal with the shame of not reaching out to her because I cut her off at some point in my life. And I kind of with the thought that I would rekindle it one day. And I don't have that opportunity anymore. It's just something I have to live with now. It's probably the most painful thing I live with. But even if I could reach out to her, even if I could go back in time, could I have done anything different? Could I have saved her? Is that something that you think about with your friend?
I do. I still have messages on my phone. We have hundreds of pictures together, many experiences together. And his drinking got so bad, and with my job, taking my job as a priority. But granted, I am married with kids and family, so I got to pay the bills. But there'd be phone calls at 3 a.m., and I would put my phone on silent because I got to get up at 5 and, go work a 14-hour day as a commander. And so he would end up calling my wife, and she would stay up all night having conversations with him in my absence because, in a way, I feel like I was being selfish. Like I was choosing my job over my friend. But at what point, man? I mean, at what point can you just say, Sean, dude, you realize I have to go to work. I can't have these drunken conversations 2 nights a week into perpetuity because you're frustrated and dissatisfied with your job. So there's multiple times I asked him to go talk to a counselor, mental health professional, Alcohol Anonymous. I mean, you name it. I tried. And so yeah, when he took his life, that's all. It was just a replaying broken record about, dude, you didn't answer the phone. You didn't answer the phone. But Tony, my buddy that when I was chatting with him, he said, Mike, if you didn't answer, he would call me. If I didn't answer, he would call the next guy. He said there was literally a list of 10 of us that he would call in these drunken stupors. So you weren't the guy. So Tony was actually the last guy that he tried to call before his death. We were all kind of comparing messages on our phones to figure out the chain of grasping at straws for help, and Tony was the last guy.
Jeez, man. And you know, alcohol played a major role in that, I promise, because as someone who went down that rabbit hole myself, I hated my existence, hated it. And I thought, and at one point, the alcohol does help. You know, at first, like any drug, it helps at first, right? That's how
Yeah.
you get lured into these things. But I'm telling you, at some point, it takes your depression to all new lows that you could not normally reach. Yeah, I mean, it will mess you up. And I remember I would end every night like bawling myself to sleep. I did not want to be alive. And you know, once I finally stopped drinking, once I finally got out of that, I could get through it. I found a way. But you just have to find time to stop abusing that substance. If you can't find a window to do that, you won't ever find your way because it's sinking you to depths that you shouldn't be able to reach.
Yeah, your initial episode, man, it touched me, and I think I reached out to you right after I listened to that episode, and I was like, bro, we are so freaking similar. You don't realize it. And chances are, since you have a pretty good following, you've probably heard that before and been like, yeah, okay, I hear that, every couple weeks. But when I listened to that episode, I was like, man, this is really hitting home, particularly because Sean had already taken his life, and I thought about some of my alcohol stupors and done dumb things that I've done. What pulled you out? What? I mean, did you have any withdrawals? What was your life like when you came out of that?
So I'm lucky to say that I was not one to have withdrawals. You know, my buddy who died of alcoholism, he absolutely had withdrawals. And that's a whole nother beast that thankfully just genetically I didn't have to deal with. So mine was completely psychologically dependent. Like I was just terrified of life. Like everything scared me, everything freaked me out. I didn't know who I was. You know, I was just going along for the ride as a maintainer. And but what pulled me out was not the rock bottom I was desperately searching for. I was trying to hospitalize myself, and I did. Um, and that didn't fix me because at some point when I came off of, the leave, my medical leave, I was still Airman White, back in the flight line. Nothing had changed. So I went right back to my ways. It wasn't until years later when I accepted help from a friend and I went out. You know, they were knocking on my door, trying to get me out of my house. I finally accepted. This was kind of the first step, was accepting help. And that night I met my wife. That one chance, that one yes, I will go with you to the movies. I saw my wife working concessions, getting the popcorn. So I was missing human connection. I was missing love. I was missing that storytelling, that mentorship. I had cut everything out of my life. And little by little, I started bringing it back in. And I started to appreciate my quirks and what makes me different. And I started to love myself instead of hate myself. And it was all from people in connection, honest to God. And then when it really turned around personally, I've been married at this point. I just had a kid. And I ran the base honor guard. I'm terrified of funerals. I've ran from death my entire life. I have let so many people down. My best friend I don't talk to this day for many reasons, but one of which, his mom died of cancer, and on her anniversary, I was home from leave and I pretended that I forgot.
Oh,
Yeah, I couldn't emotionally do it. I was an
yeah.
absolute coward. So I've been running from this stuff my whole life. And I with honor guard, you're handing flags to families. You are facing death and helping people in their darkest hour every single day, multiple times a day. And I wanted to get out of my comfort zone. I wanted to go for it, and I wanted to be there for someone in a way no one else could be. And it was that service, the connection with the airmen, serving these families. It led to me being a 12 Outstanding Airman of the Year. Mind you, I've never won an award before that. And it was all from giving back and serving others. And that healed me. That healed me. I have never drank a single day again since that time. And that was 2018. Never drank again. I was fulfilled. I don't need a substance. I don't need to check out. I'm
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Good for you. 7 years. That's amazing. What you just said just triggered me when you said about service. What, how do we get more people to understand that serving others is like the cure to so many mental health issues we have today? And once again, I was talking to the private equity guy, and he's like, "Yeah, there's really no way to measure that." And I said, "There's got to be a way for people to understand." I mean, I don't know how many leadership books I've read or how many inspirational, you name it, I've read, and it talks about a purpose-driven life and service. We say service is the military, but I just mean service and just serving another person and you serving your wife and just having a purpose to get up and get out of bed every day. Now it's, oh, well, my buddy has a fancy car and this person has a nice boat because I saw him on TikTok or you name your social media platform. I'm like, I tell my kids all the time, that's not real life, dude. That person is not as happy as you think. Please stop comparing yourself to others. It's just taxing on your own mental health.
Yeah, I think we all are going to learn those lessons painfully on our own. There's some things we just have to learn. I think other people's opinions messing with your own, view of yourself, being jealous of other people who are probably miserable, but you don't know that. And then serving others. It's counterintuitive. How can I give something to you that then gives something to me? That doesn't make sense. That's not how the world physically works. Physically, if I give you my money, I have less money now. So we're kind of hardwired to see the world like that. And it's up to us to mentor these folks and to show them that light. I'm going to tell these, you best believe in my new job, I'm going to be telling all sorts of stories. There's going to be story times with old Sergeant White. They need to hear it, man.
They do need to hear it, and especially the young guys. And that's why I'm so happy that you found this job that fits your personality, because you're going to get to these younger people that nobody's giving them the time of day.
And we're going to hit them with stories, not just the lesson, not just the slide. We're going to pause and we're going to have story time, because that's what they're going to remember. And I know that because when I was an airman and I had 12s and I got to be stuck in a bobtail with some other airmen for 12 hours straight during exercises as we're hiding in some remote spot of the flight line, that person could hate my guts, think I'm so annoying, and I could just not stand them. But after 12 hours of sitting in a car with them and knowing their whole life story, I mean, we were bonded forever after that. That's how I made friends. And that's how I started being inspired. I'd ask questions. I got curious about how they got through certain things. And it was their stories that I will never forget and that have touched me and I use to this very day. So I know the power of storytelling, and I absolutely will use that with the airmen going forward.
Good on you, man. I don't know exactly what year I learned about the power of transparency and just being honest with the folks you work with, but I just didn't treat people like I was their boss. I treated them like they were a brother, a sister, a loved one. I treat lots of my airmen like they're my kids. Like, I'm a lot older than you. I could be your dad. And so here, I'm going to give you some life advice. And it has nothing to do with, I'm not here to punish you. I'm not here to give you an LOC. I'm just here to give you some life advice.
Mm-hmm. Being a hard ass, I always thought was just the ultimate badass leadership thing to do. I mean, you kind of start with that, right? With basic training. That's the style of leadership, screaming at you till you get it right, stressing you the hell out. And so, I joined thinking, I need to be like that, like a TI, but at work, and just kind of be that hard ass. That was actually me being afraid, if I'm being honest. That's the easy way. That's playing a character, right? Yeah. All those leaders who, I'm a badass, I don't put up with anything. I have no respect for them at this point, because I know they were just being a coward, because I was that person and I was a coward. To care about someone is to be vulnerable. That is the bravest thing you can do in the best way that you can lead. And that takes years to cultivate, right? You can't make someone care.
Yeah.
But you can earn it yourself by being vulnerable and learning all these life lessons. So to hear someone like you see them as your children. I know and understand the amount of years and work you have put in to get that perspective. You don't just start with that perspective.
Yeah, that's what I'm so fearful about detaching from the military. When I was talking to one of my two-star mentors, I said, "Sir, my stomach has been in knots for months, knowing that I'm going to come in here and have this conversation with you, asking you or telling you that I've decided to retire." And he was just like, "Oh no, Mike, all these great things." I said, "Sir, I get it. I am indebted to you guys forever. You have given me skill sets and mentorship that I could never repay." But I said, I always want to be part of this organization, and I truly think I can give more to the airmen as a coat and tie, as Mr. Mike, rather than Colonel Mike. As you go up in these ranks, you're further and further detached from the airmen, and it's much more about policy. And so you don't necessarily see the implications of the decisions you're making at those levels. And so I just thought, all right, I'm good. I'm good here. This is, I can still do a lot of good things and stay in the DC area and provide stability for my kids because I would have had to move this past summer for wing command and would have been by myself and missed my son's senior year in high school. Like, okay, what's it really worth? I love airmen and I want to always take care of people, but I also don't want my own children to resent me because I left in a critical time in their life.
Yeah, you learned about yourself. You learned what you love and what you love to do. You know how many people don't know that?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, most people stay for the simple fact that they just don't know what they want in life. And the people that leave know what they want in life. They've learned something, and that's okay. If that's at your 6 year mark and you know exactly what you want to do with your life, just go do that thing now. If that's
Yeah.
what you love, go do that. I stuck around, and many people do because we're still getting something out of it. But I think you get to the point where your skills are more valuable on the outside. Whatever you love to do is just simply more valuable on the outside than Mike, I need you to write policy today, Mike. Why are you coaching these folks? My man, get on that Excel spreadsheet. There's only so
Yeah.
much you can do that.
No, yeah. And
So you're like,
I've had those priority conversations. Like, hey,
yes.
this thing is due. I got it, sir, but I still have an open door policy. And Airman Snuffy came in and was asking for some life advice, and so he was in my office for an hour and a half. And it was kind
Right.
of like, yeah, but your job is to do this. I'm like, well, I kind of think my job is to take care of the people, and then they take care of the mission. I truly believe in that. So
Once you become that oddball, it's time to go, man.
yeah, it was
It's
time.
it's funny to say it that way, but it's true. And you also get to the point, and I know you probably feel this way too, that when you're doing that policy, anyone could be in your seat and do that policy. I
Oh,
think
yeah,
that starts to eat you up too. It's like
yeah,
not so many people can podcast and coach and mentor. Not many people can do that, but I feel like everybody could sit in here. I could show them what I do and they could do it. At some point, you're not okay with that.
yeah, yeah. I had a lieutenant colonel replace me in my current job, and showed him the ropes for a few weeks, and had just 100% confidence that he would do it better than I did. And I'm like, yep. Once again, I tell myself all the time, you're not special, man. This is a machine. And eventually these musical chairs, there's no chair for you. And I was just thankful that I got to leave on my terms rather than getting that notice of you've been non-retained or you're forced retired. I like the fact that I got to choose when the game came to an end.
Hell yeah, man. Well,
So
you kind of went into a perfect spot I want to talk about, which is career transitioning. Where are you at in the process? How are you feeling about it?
it has been an absolute roller coaster. My wife just thinks that I'm a schizophrenic because I would come home with all these different ideas. Hey, one of my buddies called from the UAE and I can go over and fly drones for massive amounts of money. She's like, okay, you're not going to go be a wing commander in the United States, but you're going to leave us and go be a drone guy in the UAE. It's like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. And then I come back and I say, okay, now I'm gonna go work on Capitol Hill. I'm gonna be a national security advisor for a congressman or a senator. And she's like, okay, and what's the typical daily life schedule like? I'm like, it's like 80-hour weeks. And she's like, okay, so you're retiring and now you're gonna go get a job that pays you less money, but you work 70 and 80 hours a week. I'm like, yeah, that's probably not a good, it's probably not a good idea.
Well,
So
in your defense, for one, you've never got that freedom to pick. You don't know what the hell you're picking. You're told what to do. Hey, this
yeah,
is your next assignment. This is what you're doing. Cool, got it. You start researching it. It's not like the world is yours.
yeah.
You're going to be a little manic in the process.
Yeah, it's been chaotic for her. But then the job that I really wanted was Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Guard Association. They are the oldest lobby here in Washington, D.C., and they advocate for the Army and the Air National Guard. It's like, oh man, what a great fit. I have some friends there. Everybody has great things to say about it. I've been to the conferences before. I love what they do. Man, I've been a guard guy. This is just my way to give back. Interviews went well, all the prep, it just went wonderful. And unfortunately, I was not selected for the job, and it hurt.
Oh no.
It hurt so bad.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
my woe is me was on a peak meter. I was so frustrated.
I mean, how
And
could
my
you not? You put yourself out there for the first time.
Yeah,
All this change is happening. It's hard to not put all your eggs in one basket when you feel like you found the thing, and then for them to be like, no, we went in another direction. Now you're like, what did I do? Like,
yeah,
why?
it was crushing. It really was. It was crushing. I was feeling very sorry for myself, and I came home and told my wife, and she's like, babe, everything has always worked out in some way. Everything we've ever done, you have to have faith in the process and knowing that you just know too many people, you have too many good relationships, something's going to work out. So the next night, I'm texting all of the references on my application, saying thank you so much for trusting in me and putting in the time and having the willingness to put your name down as somebody that has faith in my capabilities. Well, one of the guys on that reference list, he said, I was waiting for you to hear if you got that job or not because I've wanted to hire you for the last 3 months, but I wanted to figure out if you're going to get the Naugus role or not. And so, once again, everything happens for a reason. So, George Mason University, you being from the DC area, a very large university here in the DC area, they are standing up a national security institute, and a 3-star that I used to work for is going to be the president or whatever you call it, the leader of this new national security institute. And so he asked me to come work for them. So I've
For
been,
real.
yeah,
You got it lined up. It's happening.
got it lined up, man. So I've been
Congrats.
doing private consulting with them on the side until I officially retire, and then start working at the institute. They're trying to get more research and development dollars and focusing on infrastructure in the U.S. and resiliency from the potential threats out there. And they said, "Hey, you know how the Department of Defense works. You know how Capitol Hill works. Those are the two pieces that we need filled on this puzzle." So it all works out, man.
My man. I mean, anyone that have you on their team is super lucky, by the way. I mean, you're clearly a hard worker. You're super smart. You know how to articulate things so well. I mean, you're a game changer on any team, truly. Like you're such a game changer. It's probably intimidating to work with you because it's like, damn, I'm gonna have to bring my A game if Mike is on this
Man,
team.
you're like my life coach. I need you to be my alarm clock in the morning. Man, you got so much game. You are the best.
I
You are,
mean, I
yeah.
really think that. So earlier when you said, I thought your story was amazing, but you probably hear that all the time, so it means nothing. Not true.
Mm,
Okay. I consider the source. Okay. With
yeah.
any feedback, I consider the source. It's one of the rules I follow so that I don't hate myself if someone's like, hey, you suck, Josh. So you're the source. If you say that I'm awesome, if Mike says I'm awesome, damn it, that fires me up. So thank you for
Well,
that. That does mean something to me, for the record.
yeah, dude, I just think you're doing such good things. And when we were talking about face-to-face podcasts, I was so sad that you didn't have a chance to do a face-to-face with General Goldfein because he is awesome. He is such a good guy. And I don't know if you've met him in person, but
I have.
okay, you have.
Yeah,
So
he ran a retirement that I filmed, so I was able to actually spend a lot of time with him, and it'll happen. He
yeah,
comes through here a lot. It will happen eventually.
okay. Well, just to share a story about him, he came to a three-star retirement ceremony at the Readiness Center, and I was the exec or something for one of the big wigs, and I just walked up to him, and he'd been recently selected as the chief of staff of the Air Force. And I said, "Hey, sir, I'm just little lowly little Major Komorous, but sir, I just wanted to say how happy I am for you to be the new chief of staff." I said, "You were the JFAC." When I was doing Iraq and Afghanistan stuff, and I just said I think it's so great that they picked such a good person. And he was so appreciative. His wife came over, she was chatting with me, and then I sent him an email a week or two later saying, "You're not going to remember me. My goodness, your exec's probably going to delete this email before it even gets to you." And he emailed back. I'm like, okay, this is a good dude. If he's
Yeah.
emailing a lowly little major in his cubicle,
Yes,
so I
he
think
is.
that's
He
awesome
is.
to get a chance to interview him.
Oh man, he got shot down only to have his life saved to become the chief of staff. My God,
Yeah.
it's a movie plot.
I felt so bad for him when General Milley was selected because it was the Air Force's turn. I get the politics. Technically, the president does get to make the decision. But at the same time, typically the president respects the process and knows, okay, based on the rank structure and the services, it's the Air Force's turn. So I felt bad for him. Man, that's a lot of years
Hmm.
investing and checking the boxes and being away from family, knowing that you're going to be the next guy. That
Yeah.
that that must have hurt.
It probably did, but he never mentioned it to me. He's pressed forward.
Yeah.
He's still doing his thing. He's still helping people. So if it did upset him, I couldn't tell, but I mean, that's just the type of professional he is. We probably would never know.
Yeah.
He's truly built different. Okay, so my wife and kids are looking at me here. So we have, I promised a park visit. My kids found this turtle. We went back. It was there again. They want to come see it again. Between you and I think it froze to death
And that's why it's still there.
because its head's out. It's not moving. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this is not normal turtle behavior.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No,
I'm
dude.
kind of
No.
afraid of what we're going to find. But I
Yeah.
do want
No.
one
No
last
worries.
topic.
Yeah. Sure.
One last topic, which is Voice for Valor, where you're going with that, and your thoughts on recruiting and retention, because I feel like the two are intertwined a bit.
Yeah.
Your voice, your podcast, your platform, your message, and recruiting and retention. So I was hoping you could kind of, as our last topic, speak on that.
It's kind of a two-prong approach. One approach is trying to identify or create value in our current members who decide to leave. People get so scared about what that next job's going to be. And you provided a perfect example. You're like, hey man, I need to make X amount of dollars. I don't want to move my family. That provides a lot of limiting options. What can I do? And that's where I like to step in and say, hey, I'm pretty good at networking. I have a chance to meet a lot of great people. Just through relationships, I could help lead you towards interviews, towards ideas, whether that's me taking your headshot to improve your look on your LinkedIn page. Because dude, in this social media world, I said that scroll wheel is going really, really fast. So if you don't have something on your page that gets them to just take a split-second break and to look at your page, next, there's just so many people out there looking for similar jobs. So trying to create that clickbait value, trying to create them understanding where their skill set equates in the civilian world. So that's one piece of Voice for Valor. And then the other piece is, like you said, sharing these stories. I have met such amazing people that I keep thinking to myself, if I would have heard that when I was a teenager or a young, 20 something kid, that would have led me even earlier to the service. Or that would have led me even earlier to being a police officer or a firefighter, is hearing these inspirational stories at a young age. And it doesn't have to be, you jumping out of a building or doing some unbelievably heroic thing. It's more about understanding what makes people tick and why do people thrive under service rather than just trying to get a paycheck. So
Absolutely.
those are the two prongs.
That's
But bro,
beautiful.
I still want to keep up and talk to you. I mean, I know we've shared some ideas offline, and I think that we could really do a lot together to create some value out there. So,
I have every other Friday off. Keep that in mind.
okay.
But no, we're going to have a recurring series of sorts. There's no way I'm going to pass up an opportunity to team with you on something. It could be anything. You like, let's talk about dogs for 2 hours. That's my podcast. Would you do it with me? And I'd say yes.
Yeah, man.
And I say dogs because my wiener dog just walked in. He's adorable. You got to see him.
Oh, I've seen him. I was going to ask you if he has back issues like all those other wiener dogs have.
Now we keep them working out. We know how to keep them those back muscles strong.
My friend's wiener dog jumped off the couch and he had to have back surgery. You have that in your future.
Hopefully not. I do have insurance though.
Okay, good for you.
Yeah, if you get it early, it's you can see
what's up, little dude. I see.
What's funny is when they sit, it like barely moves. It's like like that's sitting.
Yeah, we're talking about you. Yeah, he's in the background. We're talking about you. He wants to go outside and see where that turtle is.
But man, I respect you so much and I like you so much. You could ask me to partner with you with anything and I would say yes. So yes, we're doing something together.
Like I said, I got a lot of ideas from the photography world, from the videography world, and I could introduce you to some other folks because I think there's some very interesting projects to work on out there. So
absolutely, man. Bring me in and I will not let you down.
Sounds good, dude. Have a good day.
I do want to thank you before I let you go, just for your transparency. The stories you told were not easy. You know, I could tell you were getting a little emotional on a few of them, but you still shared it in the hopes that it's going to help someone. So I want to first and foremost thank you for that. And then I want to thank you for just being you. I've told you I've never met a commander, a pilot. Usually that merit alone is enough, right? And they take that and they become speakers or something or advisors. But you have taken such a tremendous approach at still helping airmen and any veteran and anyone struggling. I've never seen anything like it from someone at your level. And that's what makes it so special to me, because we often don't see you guys after your time's done with the Air Force. You're out in the golf course or something, you know? And you know you're laughing because you know I'm right. But you've showed up even more since you've announced your retirement, and your presence is even more felt across this massive platform. And I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited to see where you go. And I'm so proud of you and just so thankful that you are a friend in my life. So thank you for just being you, Mike, and going above and beyond for us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to talk more than when you were in the Pentagon. But when I tapped on your shoulder, you just looked like you saw a deer in the headlights. And I was like, hey.
You want to know why? Because I was looking at every face saying, I'm going to recognize someone. At some point, I gave up. I was like, I don't know any of these people. This is crazy. So I gave up. And at the point where I did not expect it, I feel this tap on my shoulder and it's you. And I'm like, what the did not expect that. I gave up. But you... Nice. Out of that whole building, we ran into each other. Tell me that's not fate.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, it is. So
that's what I'm saying.
Go make sure that turtle's still alive, and we'll catch up on another day.
All right, my man. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Yeah, dude. Take care.
You too.
See ya.